Ever feel that you're stuck in a relationship where logic just doesn't work? Maybe you bring up something they said, but according to them, they never said that. Now you're checking all of your old texts, voicemails, and wondering whether you'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe they messed something up, but somehow you always end up walking away thinking, wait, how did this end up being my fault? Or maybe it just feels like no matter what you do, it's never good enough. Look, I get it. When every conversation feels rigged, you end up feeling like the crazy one. But here's the truth. It's not you. You're not crazy. You just gotta know what kind of crazy you're dealing with. And once you see that for what it is, a lot of the insanity starts to make a bit more sense. Now, I'm not speaking from on top of a mountain here. I spent 3 years in a toxic relationship. And then I went down this deep rabbit hole over the past 10 years, studying things like psychology, narcissism, cults. You know, the kind of stuff that people only study to pass exams. I want to share with you today a few of the things that I picked up along the way, that when they clicked for me, I didn't have to doubt my own judgment. So on this video, we're breaking down 5 things that I wish I'd known sooner about the insane mind of the narcissist. First, let's start with the foundation. I got this picture of a light switch here. Why? Well, most people live life like one of those dimmable light bulbs. Some days you get some wins and life gets a little brighter. Some days life kicks your ass to the ground and life gets a little bit gloomier for a while. But narcissists, they don't live like this. They live more like this light switch. Everything is always all or nothing, on or off, all bright or pitch black. Now, I didn't make this up. This comes from this concept called splitting. It's this way of simplifying the world when things get a little bit too chaotic to cope with, and it works a little bit like this. So I want you to imagine being a kid, and the only messages you receive about yourself are one of these two. You are amazing, the best, and nothing that you can do is wrong. And you are worthless, the worst, and nothing that you can do is right. This is what happens to kids who grow up to be narcissists. They're raised in these kind of environments, and what they do is they take these ideas and they make them part of themselves. Somehow, they now have to be both the best and the worst at the same time. So to survive, they split. They literally split their personality into two. They've got the good self and they've got the bad self. And then they do the same thing to the world and everybody else in it as well. Everything is either all good or all bad, perfect or poison, all on or all off. There is no in between. Light bulb moment. This explains why they're going to treat you like gold 1 minute and garbage the next. Think about it. In reality, there's not a single person alive who's completely worthless and has nothing going for them. But likewise, there's no one around who has everything going for them either. Life is 99.999% gray area. But they're always trying to pull you or squeeze you into one of these two extremes. And they're just going to treat you the way that they see you, aren't they? Either all good or all bad. Is this making sense? So every time that you feel the need to be perfect or that nothing you ever do is going to be good enough, it's not actually because of you, it's just because you are split. Number 2 is one I like to call the bubble. Now, let me ask you a question. How is it possible to be both perfect and worthless at the same time? Now, you know that's not possible. But as a little kid, the narcissist doesn't. So what do? They imagine. They create what's called a false reality to make it make sense. Now, psychologists are going to call this a narcissistic delusion, but I want you to think of it more like they're in this giant see-through bubble. Inside the bubble, the lights are on. This is where they've quarantined the good self, the little part of them that's perfect. This good self then becomes who they are to the world. It would have been who they were when you first met them. Charming, confident, charismatic, angelic, the image of perfection. But it's fragile. Anything that suggests that they're less than perfect threatens to pop the bubble. And what's outside the bubble? Blackness, worthlessness, terror, fear, the bad self. All that stuff that they can't emotionally cope with is this close to consuming them. Now look, if either of us make a mistake, you have a bad day. Worst case, you have a bad week. But for them, anything short of perfection risks a flood of terror they simply can't handle. So their whole life is this never-ending panic of just clinging to the angel and running from the demon. And you've probably seen them flip, right? Feels kind of like they're wearing the mask in public and then behind closed doors, it slips. And your first thought is, oh, what did I do this time? But just think about the bubble for a sec. It was never actually about you. It was about survival. So if it seems like they're always on the edge of a meltdown, it's probably because they are. So next up is what they do to keep it all together. So you've heard of gaslighting, right? That's what comes into play here. What happens next is they're going to filter out anything that doesn't align with the good self. Number 3 is the filtered reality. Kind of like censoring your social media so that you only see the compliments. Because here's the thing, they're not interested in truth. Because the truth is, they're not perfect. No one is. So they don't actually want facts. They need fuel. All that matters is that they're keeping this fantasy and the idea that they're perfect, amazing, and they can't do anything wrong alive. So the bubble acts as a kind of filter for reality. One of my favorite psychologists, Robert J. Lifton, he calls it the demand for purity. Basically, only good and pure ideas are allowed in, and then for everything else, one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to reject, delete, ignore, pretend it didn't happen, or they're going to distort, change, edit, bend the truth to make it fit the narrative. They're quite literally just gaslighting themselves into believing it. So whenever you start doubting your own memory, the thing to remember is this. Before they gaslight you, they gaslight themselves. And in my opinion, they genuinely believe their version of events, but they're erasing memories in their mind as easily as deleting photos off a hard drive. So instead of trying to win the argument, which you can't, or prove them right in any way, just step back, you disengage, and protect your peace instead. Because let's face it, your peace is more important than the truth when it comes to somebody who wouldn't recognize the truth if it bit them in the ass. They're never going to see it. They're never going to see the truth. The truth has been deleted or edited beyond any recognition anyway. And if you think that sounds bad, next, they're going to pull you in too. But before we go any further, let's just sit with that. A split personality, a fantasy bubble, filtered reality. It's a lot, and I get it. So let me be straight with you for a sec. You are not dealing with someone who sees reality like you do. You are dealing with someone who had to literally break their mind just to survive childhood. Reality, truth, authenticity, trust, love. They don't know what those things are. But what you need to remember at this point is that you do. So when you're bringing this to them, they don't recognize it. You might as well be speaking a different language. When you give a narcissist your trust, they use it as fuel for the fantasy. And that's going to bring us to number 4, recruitment. This one is a big one, so I'm going to take it slow. Quick refresh. The narcissist sees everything in black and white. Cool. They withdraw into a fantasy world that we've been calling the bubble. Got it. And then they're going to gaslight themselves into believing that they are perfect, the most amazing, and that they can't do anything wrong. Okay, so what happens next? Thing is, without fuel, the fantasy falls apart. But it doesn't run on oxygen. It runs on something called supply. And this is where you come in. Supply is all of the good data that aligns with the fantasy. It's all of the ideas and compliments that get through the bubble's filter here. It could be you calling them every evening for 4 hours, you apologizing for pretty much anything, you handing over your ideas so that they can pass them off as their own, or even just you waking up at 2 a.m. to get their iPhone charger because they're too comfortable to move. That's fuel. In the fantasy, that's kind of like the fire. More fuel, more fire. Well, more supply, stronger fantasy. And the stronger the fantasy, the safer they feel. You still with me? Okay, so what happens is they're going to try and recruit as many people as possible into the bubble to stop it from popping. And they're going to do this in one of two ways. There's a push, that's bullying and aggression, threats, intimidation. If you don't do this for me, bad stuff is going to happen. And there's also a pull. This is flattery, charm, sucking up to people that they see as special. You are amazing. And together we're pretty much unbeatable. Get it? They're going to push and pull you into seeing the world as they do. And if you buy into it, great. You get it. You're in. You're fuel now. And the fantasy becomes a shared fantasy. It's us against the world, right? But if you challenge it, you become the threat to be eliminated. You stay in the dark. So if it feels like you're running a marathon just to keep up with their relentless demands for attention, validation, reassurance, and face time, this kind of explains why, doesn't it? Recruitment is why it's so exhausting. Because once you're in, you got to give them everything, or you risk that angel turning into a demon pretty quick. A toxic relationship, you're fuel until you quite literally burn out. Now, fair warning, this next one's a little trippy, but if you feel like nothing that you could ever do is going to be good enough for them, then this one's going to hit home. Last one is projections. So a mate of mine at work has this toxic boss, and we're talking and he turns to me, he says, Lawrence, I could do one thing today and I'd be told I'd nailed it. But then I could do the same thing tomorrow and I'd get it in the neck. Now you might be thinking, mate, that's splitting. And you'd be bang on. But there's something else to remember as well here, and there's no simpler way of putting it. They are never talking to you. They are talking to a version of you that exists in their head, a projection. And that projection is split. It's either all good or all bad. And in fact, narcissists, they only relate to projections, not people. It's kind of like they've taken a snapshot, then photoshopped it to perfection, and they squeezed it into their fantasy fun world with all of the other perfect things. Now, at some point, that little snapshot of you is going to go from hero to zero in an instant. And you'll know this because it's going to hit you like you're the biggest disappointment. Fact is this, though. They never saw you. They saw only who they needed you to be. My mate says he finds it so hard to know how much of the time he had with his boss was real versus how much was a lie. And if you've been tracking what we've been covering so far, splitting, fantasy, gaslighting, recruitment, then you already know how much of it was real. None of it. It was all a doctored, black and white projection in their mind. The reason that it feels that you were never good enough is because you were never seen. You weren't seen because when they were a kid, they weren't seen either. And when you're still in the bubble with them, you're sharing the fantasy, you're going to take on a lot of the same perceptions, feelings, beliefs that they do. Because it's not you that's not good enough, it's the image of you. And as long as you're in here, you believe that the image of you is you. See what I'm saying? But look, just because it feels that way doesn't mean that it is. You are not a projection. You are a real person. And they can't see real people. I've always liked this idea that there's a difference between how things are and how things feel. You are not your emotions. And if you can kind of understand that, then you can do the one thing that they can't. Choose reality. You can step out of this. You can leave the bubble. Let's be honest, you're not dealing with somebody who's responding to reality. They're reacting to a fantasy. You could have done everything right, but it would still have been wrong. Because it's not about you. It was never about you. Now, I know that is a lot to take in. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video today, it's this. They're not always out to get you, but they're always in it for themselves. Basically, any attempts to reason with them, get them to take responsibility, get them to care about your feelings, or just get them to see things for what they are, is a waste of time. To a narcissist, the world is black and white. They escape into a fantasy world to make it make sense. They then gaslight themselves into believing that they are perfect and amazing and can't do anything wrong, only to lie, cheat, and manipulate others into sharing their delusion so they can fill their head with photoshopped snapshots of everyone, all so that they can feel safe. It's kind of different when you put it like that, isn't it? But that's narcissism in a nutshell. Now that you know what you're up against, you can take all of that energy, focus, and attention and redirect it to where it matters most. That's a wrap for now. I hope you found it helpful. As always, live life by design, not by default. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.